First, we'll look at how to add a command to the system. Start by holding down the user switch and navigating to the user MIDI section. You can store up to 250 reusable commands in CLOCKstep. What do I mean by reusable? Any command that you want to send, say it's a control change that targets a track in a looper and mutes it, you only need to enter it one time. CLOCKstep stores the command as an entity, and there's no need to set the same properties over and over when you want to use that same MIDI command again. If that's not entirely understood, it'll be made very clear by the end of this video. Let's take some real-world examples and set up a couple commands. Our first example will be a command to mute track 5 of a singular sound Eros looper. According to that device's user manual, I can mute track 5 by sending it a control change message on controller number 38. With a value of 5. My Eros is set up to listen on MIDI channel 2. I'll name it mute 5. You should consider and name each command well, as this will make it much easier to reference later. You can have up to 12 characters in the name. Finally, save your changes, or you can exit without saving. Our second example is a preset change command sent to a delay effect unit. The sound we want to load is stored in the delay unit as preset number 2. The delay unit is set up to listen on channel 5. I'll name it lead delay. And save. Here's a list of each of the MIDI command types available to be set. Program change and control change we've just seen. Note on sends a channel command instructing an instrument to play a specific note. Its values include note number and velocity as well as channel. Note off silences a note that's currently being played. Note after touch is a channel command that applies some kind of expression to the note being played. Its values include note number and pressure as well as channel. Channel after touch is similar to note after touch, except it doesn't target just a single note number. Pitch bend is more typically used with an expression controller, but it's included here for completeness. Its values are pitch and channel. On devices that support it, song position will cue the location within a song to a specific bar. Some devices may also support song select, so that's included here as well, though it is more common to load songs as presets with the preset change command. Start sends the system real-time start command. It's the same command that CLOCKstep sends when you press start. Stop sends the system real-time stop command, and it's also the same command that CLOCKstep sends when you press stop. There are two special versions of the start and stop command. These are labeled start CS and stop CS. CS just stands for CLOCKstep. Instead of sending a MIDI command out directly, these commands control the start and stop functions on CLOCKstep itself, which then in turn send the related MIDI command. Continue is a system real-time command that instructs a device, such as the DAW, to start from a bar that it was currently set at. BPM CS is a special command that controls CLOCKstep directly and will shift the BPM to a new value in real time. Time signature CS is another special command that controls CLOCKstep directly and will shift the time signature to a new value in real time. Now that we've created a couple different user MIDI commands, let's see how to use them within song presets. Edit a preset and jump over to the MIDI 1 assign parameter. Select by name the user MIDI command that we created for the delay unit. The next parameter is called MIDI 1 when. This is the event that must take place in order to execute the command. The default is user press. So now when we save, the user switch can be pressed to send that command to the delay unit. You can also see that the name of the user MIDI command was automatically placed on the screen. Back again to the MIDI1Win parameter, set it to user on. Now assign a second MIDI command that sends a different delay preset change and set that to user off. Save that, and now with the preset loaded, the user switch loads the first delay effect as it did before, but then places the user switch in an on state with the LED lit. The name of the command was also changed on screen to the command that will execute when you press again. So far I've shown how commands can be executed immediately, but for each of those options, there's also a related option for queuing a command. A queued command will execute at the start of the next bar instead of when you press it. Go back to the MIDI1Win parameter and this time change the action from user on to queue user on. And in MIDI2Win, set it to queue user off. As before, we can see the name of the MIDI command on screen, but now it's prefixed with a dotted icon. That icon indicates that the command will wait to execute on the next bar. You can see that the clock is counting off in 4/4. Now when I press the user switch, the LED will flash, indicating its pending execution, and will go steady once the command executes on the first beat. Again, the name of the command changes on screen to indicate the next command. Additionally, when the clock is stopped, the queued toggle command works just like the toggle command without queuing. Now I want to talk briefly about MIDI assignments. You're probably already thinking, can I assign multiple commands to the user switch for press, queue, toggle, etc.? Yes, you can. You can assign up to 8 MIDI commands overall within a preset. If you want 2 or more commands to execute with a single user switch press, then just enter each of them as I've already shown. There will always be one command name on screen which is automatically chosen. I'll get to how that choice is made in a moment. There is one limitation I haven't mentioned. If you use an on action to create a toggle, you must have another command that uses the off action. On and off actions will be ignored without a corresponding related action. Now about the name that appears on the screen when you stack a bunch of commands on the user switch. This is an automatic feature that uses rules to prioritize which name will appear. If you have a pair of queue user on and off commands, those will be the names chosen first. If those don't exist, then comes queue user press. Then the regular on off, and finally the regular press. In other words, queued commands always get the spotlight, and toggles are more important than single presses. All things being equal, the first command in the list will be chosen. That covers the user switch, but there are a couple more action types to know about. You can assign your MIDI commands to the transport start or transport stop behaviors. This is useful when you have a device that doesn't respond to the regular MIDI start or stop, but they do have CC commands for performing similar actions. And you can also assign commands to be sent when the preset is loaded, useful for getting other devices ready for the next song. We're getting towards the end of this part of the topic, and I just want to take a moment to show you something that I personally think is really cool. Remember in the beginning I talked about being able to create commands that would change CLOCKstep's BPM and time signature. I've created 2 time signature changes that will be queued by the user switch, one in 4/4 and one in 5/8. The last piece to look at is the MIDI cue offset parameter. By default, all cued commands are sent just prior to sending the MIDI clock pulse for the start of a bar. But you can adjust that by one clock pulse forward or backward. It affects only the user commands that you have set for a queuing action. Consider for a second the fact that MIDI is a serial messaging protocol. MIDI messages are sent one at a time, and no two messages can arrive at the exact same time. The implication of this is that although CLOCKstep can queue an action for the first beat of a bar, the command itself cannot be transmitted along with the actual clock message and executed at the exact same time on the receiving end. One exception to this is the start command due to how the MIDI spec is written, but the execution of all other commands will be up to the receiving device ultimately. For most messages, a millisecond difference here or there isn't a deal breaker, but if you're going to send a command where timing is critical, then you can fine-tune at what point that command is sent. You can also use this artistically to defer a command to a beat other than the start of a new bar. 24 clock pulses are always equal to 1/4 note, so 12 pulses for an 1/8 note, 6 pulses for a 16th note, etc. Just don't exceed the length of an entire bar or the offset will be ignored.